The morning air bit harder than she expected. Alyssa Monroe pulled her coat tighter, though it was too thin to matter. The zipper had been broken for months. Her fingers, swollen and dry, clutched at the fabric as if she could will it to warm her. 7 months pregnant. 2 days without sleep. 3 shelters turned her away. One after another, each rejection colder than the last. She stood outside the last one now. A low brick building with peeling paint. Women's Resource Center, stenciled in faded blue above the door. Through the glass, she could see a receptionist tapping on her phone. Alyssa knocked gently. The woman looked up, paused, then shook her head. Alyssa opened the door halfway. "Please," she said, voice raw. "It's freezing. I don't have anywhere to stay." The receptionist didn't make eye contact. "We're full," she muttered. "Sorry, but I'm pregnant." The woman gave a quick shrug. "Try St. Margaret's. Couple streets over." "I already did. They said they're closed for renovations." "Then I don't know what to tell you." Alyssa's lip quivered, more from the humiliation than the cold. "Please, just let me wait inside for a few hours. Just to warm up." "I said we're full." This time, the receptionist's voice had an edge. "We can't take in everyone." Alyssa stepped back. The door shut fast behind her. Through the glass, she saw the woman whispering to a security guard. She walked away, belly heavy, feet numb. She crossed into the part of the city where the sidewalks were newer, cleaner, where dogs wore sweaters and people wore earbuds and avoided eye contact. No one stopped. No one asked if she was okay. They saw her and then they didn't. She paused near a closed storefront. It had once been a local diner. Now it was another coming soon condo, the kind she'd cleaned for cash when she still had energy. The awning above gave her a little cover from the wind. She slid down onto the concrete back against the wall. Her body ached as it bent. The weight of everything, her baby, her choices, this damn city, settled heavy on her chest. Snow began to fall, slowly at first, gentle flakes that stung when they landed. Alyssa reached into her backpack, pulled out a frayed blanket. It smelled like mildew and fast food wrappers. She wrapped it around her legs, around her stomach, around the small life inside her. She looked up. Across the street, sleek glass buildings reached into the sky. One of them had floor-to-ceiling windows glowing orange from the morning sun. She imagined someone up there sipping coffee, adjusting a thermostat, maybe watching her through the glass like she was a stain on the sidewalk. Her lips trembled. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "I have nowhere to go." The wind howled louder, a cruel answer. Alyssa curled tighter beneath the awning. Somewhere deep in her abdomen, her child kicked, soft, like a knock on a locked door. She closed her eyes, pressed a hand to her belly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Across the street, behind a pane of spotless glass, a man stood watching. His hand froze midway to his coffee cup. He didn't blink. He just stared at her, still silent, as if the city around him had paused too. The snow fell harder. David Whitmore stood barefoot in his penthouse living room, brandy warming his palm, when the woman caught his eye. She was across the street, crumpled beneath the awning of what used to be Rosie's diner. He remembered when they served cornbread so sweet it made your teeth ache. Now it was boarded up, future home of upscale condos his firm had helped finance. Irony never had sharp teeth until it sank into memory. He tilted his glass, watching amber swirl like smoke. He could barely make her out through the snow, just the shape of someone too still for the cold. Then the faintest movement, a hand on her stomach, slow and tender, pregnant. He blinked. 1,000 faces from 1,000 walks past her would miss the meaning of that gesture. Not him. He had lived too long with someone who taught him to see. The penthouse was silent, save for the low hum of the heating vents. Around him, sleek minimalism and custom finishes offered the kind of comfort most people would never touch. A gas fireplace flickered beside the couch. The warmth in the room felt heavy. He looked away, walked to the kitchen, reached for the decanter again. But her image lingered. David hadn't asked to remember Celia this morning. But grief had a nasty habit of arriving like a cracked window, quiet, slow, cold. Celia, his late wife, would have already been down there. No hesitation, no coat, just a scarf, her sharp words, and the fire in her eyes. She was never gentle about injustice. If it makes you comfortable, it probably protects you, she used to say. He could still hear her voice, plain as day. David turned back toward the window. The woman hadn't moved. Her head was bowed, her frame hunched beneath the threadbare blanket like it could shield her from judgment. Or worse, indifference. She looked not like someone weak, but like someone denied. Her presence on that sidewalk wasn't about failure. It was about exclusion. His phone buzzed. A calendar notification. Investor call at 10 a.m. David dismissed it. A moment passed. Then two. He walked to the window again, closer this time. Pressed a hand against the glass. The chill didn't reach him. Of course it didn't. The building was sealed tight, climate-controlled, designed to block out noise and need. He looked down at the street. She said something. He whispered to no one. He couldn't hear it, but he had seen her lips move. Something in the way she cradled her stomach after. Something hollow in the way she didn't cry. He imagined Celia watching him now. Not with anger. Worse, with disappointment. The kind of disappointment that curled inward, like smoke in a closed room. David turned away from the window, sat down, then stood up again. He crossed the room, brandy untouched. He wasn't the man Celia married anymore. But maybe he didn't have to stay the man who outlived her, either. The wind howled against the glass like a warning. Or maybe a dare. He moved to the hall, grabbed his coat off the hook. Paused at the elevator. His fingers hovered over the panel. Just one floor down. Just one crossing of the street. Just one conversation. And yet, everything inside him twisted. This wasn't a movie. He wasn't some savior. He knew better than that. But something about her, about the quietness of her surrender, about the way the city refused to see her, made inaction feel obscene. The elevator chimed. Doors slid open. David exhaled, stepped in. As the doors closed, he caught one last glimpse of her. Still there. Still invisible. Not for long. The elevator doors opened to bitter wind and silence. David stepped out into the private courtyard that connected his building to the sidewalk. The snow was falling heavier now, swirling in slow, aimless spirals. Across the street, the woman was still there, still curled beneath the awning, motionless except for the hand that cradled her belly. He crossed the street faster than he expected. Every step felt like a trespass. Up close, her face was even younger than he imagined. Dark curls framed sharp cheekbones and cracked lips. Her eyes flicked up at him, guarded, wary, hollow. He stopped just a few feet away, crouched slightly, careful not to get too close. "Hey," he said, voice soft. I saw you from across the street. Are you okay?" Her eyes narrowed. She didn't respond. "I'm not here to bother you. Just..." He glanced up at the window he'd been standing behind. "You shouldn't be out in this cold." She blinked, then finally spoke, slow and low. "No one's giving me much choice." David nodded, not knowing what to say to that truth. "I live right there," he said, motioning behind him. "It's warm. There's food. If you need a place to rest, just for a bit." Her expression tightened. "Why?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe I should have done something sooner. You don't even know me." "I don't need to," he replied. The air grew still. Behind David, a luxury SUV eased to a stop. A white couple stepped out, dressed in gym wear and matching disgust. They stared at Alyssa, then at David, then back at Alyssa again. "She's not from around here," the woman whispered loudly to her partner, not bothering to hide the edge in her voice. Alyssa heard it. Her shoulders stiffened. Then came the low purr of a police cruiser slowing as it turned the corner. The driver, a white officer, glanced toward the sidewalk with trained suspicion. Not at David. Not at the couple. Her. Alyssa's stomach twisted, baby shifting within. She had heard enough "excuse me, ma'am" to know how these things began. "I'm not some stray you have to rescue," she said, voice firm. David raised his hands gently. "I'm not trying to rescue you." Her eyes stayed on his for a long moment. Cold wind whipped through the alley. Her fingers trembled, and she pulled the blanket tighter around her. Not trust, just tired. "Fine," she muttered. "Just for a little while." David reached out a hand to help her up, but she ignored it and stood on her own, wobbling slightly as her weight shifted. Her boots were soaked. Her coat, more a suggestion than protection. They crossed the street together, two mismatched figures in a city that didn't make room for this kind of moment. The couple behind them kept staring. The police cruiser rolled on slowly. David keyed them into the building. Alyssa didn't look back. As the glass doors closed behind her, her reflection shimmered for a second, then vanished inside the walls of privilege not meant for her. Her steps were tentative, her eyes scanning marble floors and gold fixtures like a trap might spring from underfoot. "You live here?" she asked quietly. David hesitated. "Yeah." She exhaled something between a laugh and a scoff. "Of course you do." The elevator dinged. They stepped in together. Neither spoke as the doors slid shut, but the air between them buzzed with suspicion, tension, and something neither of them could yet name. The elevator opened into silence thick with wealth. Alyssa stepped out slowly, her soaked boots pressing against polished walnut floors. The warmth of the penthouse hit her skin like steam, but it didn't melt the chill beneath it. Glass walls revealed a skyline drenched in snow. Soft jazz floated from unseen speakers. A faint citrus scent hung in the air, clean, expensive, curated. She stopped just inside the doorway. "This ain't a house," she muttered. "This a museum." David offered a half-smile. "Make yourself comfortable." She looked at the cream-colored furniture and sharp angles. "Not much chance of that." Her fingers hovered over her belly as if to shield her child from opulence. She didn't sit. Not yet. Her eyes moved like she was searching for hidden cameras or strings attached. David walked to the kitchen. "Are you hungry?" She was, but the word felt too needy in her mouth. "I could eat," she said flatly. He made sandwiches, simple, quiet. She finally sat, sinking slowly into a chair like it might reject her. The heat from the vents wrapped around her shoulders, and the tightness in her chest eased, just a fraction. They ate in silence. The first bite of food brought tears to her eyes. She blinked them away fast. He didn't ask. Later, as she nursed a cup of warm tea, her eyes wandered to a photograph on the bookshelf. A smiling woman, black, mid-30s, her eyes bright, her hand on David's shoulder. "Your wife?" Alyssa asked. David nodded. "Celia. She passed 2 years ago. She looks kind." She was. And fierce. A pause. "She would have said something long before I did." Alyssa stared into the cup. "White folks usually do it backwards," she said quietly. "They help when it's safe, when it won't cost them nothing." David didn't argue. The warmth was working through her bones now, and with it came memory. Scenes flickering behind her eyes like static from a broken screen. "You're not a good fit for the culture here," her manager had said as she stood near the back exit of the boutique. "It's your tone, Alyssa. Customers pick up on that." Tone. That's what they always said when they meant black. And before that, the clinic receptionist with the smug look. "You'll have to reschedule. You're late." "I was 5 minutes late." "Well, the doctor's booked now." There were no other patients in the lobby. And Malik, God, Malik had been gone since the second pink line. "You sure it's mine?" he texted. She never replied. Her hand drifted to her belly again. "Do you want to talk about it?" David asked gently. She stared at him, then away. "You mean trauma? Or just the stuff that makes you uncomfortable?" He flinched just slightly, but nodded. She took a breath. "I'm used to being seen as a problem to solve, a story to pity, not a person." David said nothing. He just listened, and that, strangely, made her feel more exposed than if he had tried to relate. Outside, the wind pressed hard against the glass walls. Inside, Alyssa finally leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes just long enough to feel the fatigue claim her. "You can sleep here tonight," he said. She nodded, but her shoulders stayed tense. Relief like warmth came slowly, and trust, even slower. As she lay on the guest bed later, clean sheets, dim light, her hand on her stomach, the shadows didn't leave her, because nothing about comfort felt safe. The knock came before sunrise. David was in the kitchen, halfway through scrambling eggs, when Alyssa emerged in a robe, eyes swollen from restless sleep. Her fingers cradled the curve of her belly like a shield. "Someone's at the door," she said, voice hoarse. David checked the security camera feed. His stomach dropped. Two men with bulky cameras stood outside the glass entry. One raised a hand in a casual wave toward the lens. "They've already found you," David muttered. Alyssa stepped back. "Who are they?" He didn't answer. Instead, he opened his phone. The screen lit up with messages, calls, news alerts. His name trending. A single headline spread across dozens of outlets. "Tech tycoon brings pregnant homeless woman into $12 million penthouse." There was a photo, grainy, zoomed in, from the night before. Alyssa, hunched in the snow, stepping through his front door. The caption underneath twisted the moment. "Savior or stunt? What the hell is this?" Alyssa snapped. David turned the screen toward her. Someone must have taken a photo from across the street. She stared. The image felt like a slap. Her cold, vulnerable, caught in an act of desperation now painted as drama. Comments scrolled beneath the article. "Must be sleeping with her. Another liberal guilt trip. Bet she's lying about being homeless. Where's the baby daddy? Typical." Her breath quickened. "They're talking about me like I'm not even real. I can get it taken down," David said quickly. She scoffed. "That's not how this works. You're not God, David." His phone buzzed again. Another call, this time from Jeff, his partner at Whitmore Ventures. David answered. "David," Jeff's voice was clipped. "What the hell is going on? It's not what it looks like. Doesn't matter what it is. You're on TMZ. There's a picture of her in your house robe, for Christ's sake. We've got clients asking if you've lost your mind. I was helping someone in need. And now we're trending under #PimpPenthouse. Get your head out of your ass. This is suicide for the brand." David hung up without another word. Alyssa sat down hard on the edge of the couch, holding her head in her hands. "I knew it. I knew this was a mistake." He turned toward her. "You're not a mistake. You don't get it," she said, looking up, eyes glassy. "I don't have the luxury of being seen like this. I don't get second chances after a bad headline." "I'll fix it," he said again, softer this time. She stared at him for a long, tense beat. "That's the problem. You think this is about fixing things. You think you're the hero in this story." He opened his mouth but said nothing. "I thought you saw me," she whispered. "But maybe you just wanted to feel better." The air between them crackled. Pain, betrayal, something deeper. She stood slowly. Her hands trembled as she gathered her things, even though she had nowhere to go. David didn't stop her. He didn't know how. The next few hours passed in a blur of silence. The cameras outside multiplied. Statements were drafted, ignored, deleted. Commentators online speculated about everything from her intentions to her unborn child's race. Alyssa stayed in the guest room, curled under the covers, clutching her phone with no one to call. By evening, the city outside glittered like glass shards under streetlight. David knocked gently on her door. She didn't answer. He sat down on the other side of it, back to the wall, head in his hands. Not knowing that beyond that door, Alyssa was writing something. Words meant only for herself. And not knowing that before the next sunrise, something would crack between them. Not break, but open. Morning light crept through the blinds, pale and uninvited. Alyssa sat on the edge of the guest bed, fully dressed, her packed bag beside her. She hadn't slept. The night had been too loud. Headlines screaming behind her eyes. That photograph burned into her brain. David's silence ringing louder than any insult. She stepped out into the living room, heart hammering. David sat on the couch, staring at his phone like it held something sacred or damning. Maybe both. "We need to talk," she said. He looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, jaw tense. "I know." She dropped the bag onto the floor between them. "I'm leaving." His posture shifted. "Alyssa, you brought me in here like I was a project, something to polish and parade. You didn't care what it would do to me." "That's not true," he said quickly. "You didn't ask me. You just did. You let them take my face and twist it, and you didn't even try to stop it." "I didn't know how," he admitted. "Everything happened so fast." She stepped forward. "You've got power, David. More than people like me ever will. And you used it without thinking what it would cost." His voice rose. "You think I don't know what things cost?" A pause stretched between them. "You don't," she said. "I lost my wife," he said, louder now. "I lost the one person who ever made me see any of this. She would have never let me sit behind glass and do nothing. I've been living with that guilt every damn day." Alyssa stared at him. "I opened that door for you because I couldn't live with the version of me who didn't." She swallowed hard. "But you didn't open it for me. You opened it for her. For what she would have done." His voice cracked. "Maybe I did. At first." Silence swelled again. Not heavy this time, just raw. "I'm tired of being someone's redemption," she said quietly. "All I wanted was warmth. Safety. Not pity. Not a spotlight." David looked down at his hands. "I thought I was doing the right thing. Then why did it feel like being put on trial?" Their eyes met. Something passed between them. Anger, maybe, but threaded with recognition. "You were right," he said finally. "This place, it doesn't have locks, but it's still a prison. I thought I was offering you freedom, but I never gave you a key." Alyssa sat down across from him. Slowly, she took a deep breath. "I don't want your key," she said. "I want my own." David nodded. For the first time since she entered the penthouse, the room felt real. Not curated, not clean, just human. She looked at the bag on the floor, then at the door. "I'm not staying," she said, "but I'm not running either." "Then let's figure out what comes next," he replied. "Not as a rescuer, not as a savior, just a man trying to listen." The next morning, David stood in front of the red brick church like he had 1,000 times before. Celia used to drag him there on Saturdays, not for worship, but for strategy meetings, food drives, voter registration events. Now, the front steps felt taller, heavier somehow, like they carried the weight of everything he hadn't done since she died. He knocked twice before the old oak door creaked open. "David Whitmore," said a voice like gravel wrapped in honey. "Reverend Shonda," he said, managing a tired smile. She looked him up and down. "Been a while." "I know. You look like a man who's either found God or lost sleep." "Both," he admitted. She stepped aside and let him in. The smell of incense and lemon oil clung to the air. Inside her office, mismatched chairs circled a chipped coffee table. A mural of Harriet Tubman covered the back wall, bold and bright, like she was still marching forward. David sat. He hesitated, then told her everything. About Alyssa, about the photo, about the silence that nearly drowned them both. Reverend Shonda listened, her fingers steepled, her face unreadable. When he finished, she leaned back. "You want a gold star for bringing a black woman in from the cold?" "No," he said quietly. "You sure?" He swallowed. "I want to know what to do now." She sighed, her voice softening. "One gesture doesn't dismantle a system, but it can be a door. The question is, do you want to hold it open when the world walks through?" "I think I do." "Then stop centering your guilt and start showing up." She reached into a drawer and handed him a business card. "Talk to Tasha. She's one of ours. If Alyssa wants next steps, Tasha helps women write their own." David nodded slowly. "Thank you." Reverend Shonda smiled. "Don't thank me yet. Showing up is the easy part." Across the city, Alyssa sat in a sunlit office that smelled like lavender and cheap printer ink. Tasha was nothing like what Alyssa expected. Mid-30s, natural hair twisted into coils, skin deep brown and glowing, wearing jeans and boots like she had somewhere better to be but chose to sit here instead. "So," Tasha said, leaning forward, "what do you want, Alyssa?" The question startled her. Not what happened to you, not how did you end up here, just what do you want? Alyssa stared at the cup of water in her hand. "I want my baby to be safe. I want to stop feeling like every step forward costs a piece of myself." Tasha nodded. "That's a good start. You've got rights, options. I can help with housing, medical referrals, even a small stipend if you want to finish school later on." "Why are you helping me?" Tasha smiled. "Because somebody once did it for me. Because you're not a case file, you're a person. And because systems may fail you, but people don't have to." Alyssa blinked fast, nodding once. They began drafting a plan, basic steps, reachable goals, safe housing not tied to favors or headlines. For the first time in weeks, Alyssa felt something unfamiliar rising in her chest. Not hope, control. That evening, David picked her up outside Tasha's office. He didn't ask questions, just unlocked the car and drove. As they passed, a street mural splashed across a building wall. Painted fists, flowers, names of lives cut short. Alyssa spoke first. She said, "I get to decide what comes next." David looked over. "Then whatever you choose, I'll follow your lead." And for the first time since she'd stepped into his world, Alyssa almost believed him. The folding chairs squeaked as people settled in. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The community center's rec room smelled faintly of coffee, nerves, and old paint. Alyssa stood near the front, heart pounding so loud she barely heard the introductions. Her palms were damp. Her breath came short, but she stayed standing. Tasha gave her a nod from the side of the room. David stood farther back, by the door, shoulders squared, eyes steady, saying nothing. The moderator tapped the mic. "We're here tonight to talk about access, safety, and justice in our neighborhoods. Our next speaker has a story that touches all of those." Alyssa stepped forward. Some phones rose instantly. A couple of people whispered. She adjusted the mic with trembling fingers. "I didn't want to be seen," she began. "Not like this. Not through a headline or a photo someone took of me freezing outside a penthouse." A few heads turned. Recognition. "I'm here because I was invisible until I became someone else's story. But I've been here. People like me have always been here." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "I've been denied shelter because I looked confrontational. I've been turned away from clinics for being 5 minutes late. I've been followed through grocery stores. I've had people tell me I was too angry when I was just tired, pregnant, black, alone." A hush fell over the room. "Some of you in this room smiled at me when I walked in. Others stared. That's okay. You don't have to believe me. You just have to stop pretending this doesn't happen." Someone near the back clapped once. Slowly. Others joined. A woman near the front folded her arms, lips tight. Two older men exchanged whispers. "But I'm not here for applause," Alyssa said, eyes scanning the room. "I'm here because no one should have to earn the right to be treated with dignity. And if my story makes you uncomfortable, good. Maybe that's where change starts." Cameras flashed. Someone coughed. Tension rippled through the crowd like heat off asphalt. David remained still. He didn't try to stand beside her, didn't raise his hand, didn't speak. And that, Alyssa realized, was the right thing. This was not his fire to put out. It was hers to stand in and rise from. She stepped back from the mic. For a moment, no one moved. Then, from the middle row, a young Latina mother stood and clapped. A man in a janitor's uniform joined her. Tasha stood next, then more hesitant than firm. The room was divided, but shifting. Afterward, as Alyssa walked out into the night, the cold didn't bite the same way. David caught up beside her. "You were incredible." She looked ahead. "I wasn't trying to be." "Exactly." They walked in silence, side by side. Neither noticed the camera flash from across the street. By morning, her speech had gone viral. Clips from the town hall exploded across social media. Some called Alyssa brave. Others called her a liar. The same photo from weeks ago, her outside David's door, hunched in the snow, resurfaced like a scar that refused to fade. By the afternoon, David's phone rang. He didn't answer at first. Then he did. "David," Jeff said, blunt as ever, "the board wants a statement." David leaned against the window, watching a group of kids play across the street. "I already made one," he said. "Not that statement. We need you to clarify this isn't a political thing." "It is a political thing," David replied calmly. "It always was. You just liked it better when it was abstract." There was a long pause. "We're asking you to step down." He didn't argue, didn't beg. He simply said, "Okay." 2 days later, someone smashed the windows at Tasha's office. Spray paint bloomed across the brick walls. "Race baiters, go back to where you came from." Tasha didn't cry. She swept glass off her desk and scheduled another intake appointment that afternoon. "They thought that'd scare us," she said to Alyssa, who stood in the wreckage with her. Alyssa picked up a broken photo frame from the floor. It held a picture of Tasha and a group of smiling girls at a graduation ceremony. She stared at it for a long moment, then set it gently on a shelf. "No," she said. "This is just proof we're being heard." Then came the threats. Letters shoved under doors. DMs full of venom. One said, "You should have stayed in the gutter where you belong." Alyssa read it once, then deleted it. But something else came, too. Neighbors who once avoided her now left homemade meals outside David's door. A retired teacher dropped off baby clothes with a note. "For the little one who will change everything." Someone installed a small community fridge on the corner. Stocked it with water, formula, applesauce, notes of encouragement. One note read, "You're not alone anymore." The air in the neighborhood shifted. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. And through it all, David stayed. He gave interviews when asked, but only about the tech firm. Not about her. Never about her. He walked behind her when she needed space. Beside her when she didn't. "You regret it?" Alyssa asked one evening as they sat outside, watching the sunset drip gold over the rooftops. He glanced at her. "Losing the company?" "No." "Opening that door?" David exhaled. "No. But I regret not knowing what came with it." She nodded. "I knew. I've always known." Silence fell, comfortable now, worn in like old denim. "You know," she said, hand on her belly, "people keep asking what I want to name her." He raised an eyebrow. "Have you decided?" "Maybe." A small smile played at the corners of her lips. "But some things," she said, "you don't name until you know they've survived." David didn't reply. He just nodded. And the stars began to emerge, one by one, over a city starting to listen. The ribbon fluttered in the breeze, bright against the backdrop of brick and sky. The new transitional housing center stood where an abandoned strip mall once slumped. Now, fresh paint, blooming flower beds, and a bold mural stretched across the entrance wall. A mother lifting a child into the air, surrounded by vibrant hands in every shade of brown, gold, and rose. Alyssa stood just in front of it, her daughter tucked safely in her arms, wrapped in a pale yellow blanket. The baby stirred slightly, eyelids fluttering. Grace. She'd finally said the name aloud 2 weeks ago. The moment she held her in the hospital, eyes wide, fists clenched like she had something to prove from her first breath. Alyssa knew. Grace wasn't what saved her. She was what reminded her she didn't need to be saved. The folding chairs were filled with neighbors, organizers, city officials, and volunteers. Tasha stood at the edge of the crowd, beaming. Reverend Shonda, arms folded, nodded from the front row. And farther back, nearly hidden behind a tall man with a camera, stood David. Not in front, not holding a mic, not even in the program, just there, exactly where he needed to be. The MC finished her introduction and stepped aside. Alyssa approached the microphone slowly, adjusting Grace gently against her chest. Her palms weren't sweating this time. Her knees didn't shake. She didn't need notes. "Thank you all for being here," she began. "This place isn't just a building. It's a chance, a pause, a breath." She looked out at the crowd, her gaze settling momentarily on David, then lifting above him. Months ago, I was sleeping under an awning, 7 months pregnant, terrified I wouldn't make it through the night. The cold felt like truth, and I believed it. She took a slow breath. But the cold lied. I wasn't weak. I wasn't invisible. I was just in a system built to keep people like me in the margins. And I got tired of asking to be let in. Someone in the audience murmured, "Amen." So instead, we built this. A light cheer rose, quiet but growing. This center will house 20 women and children. It will offer job training, mental health services, medical care, and most importantly, respect. Dignity. We won't ask people to prove they're worth helping. We'll know they are. She adjusted the mic slightly. I used to think I had nowhere to go. But the truth is, I was never the one who needed saving. I just needed space to stand. A longer silence followed. Then applause. Not thunderous. Not orchestrated. Just real. As Alyssa stepped away from the mic, a breeze lifted a corner of Grace's blanket. The baby yawned, arms stretching wide like she was claiming the world. Later, after the crowd had thinned and the ribbon had been cut, David approached. "You were incredible," he said softly. Alyssa smiled, tired but certain. "I wasn't trying to be." They stood there a moment, watching the sun dip behind the mural, long shadows stretching over the sidewalk. "I'm not going back to the penthouse," he said suddenly. "I donated it, turned it into temporary housing." She blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. "Someone once told me a door's not worth much unless you hold it open." Her eyes met his. "You finally listened." "I'm still learning." Grace let out a tiny squeak. David looked at the baby, then back at Alyssa. "She looks like you. She looks like the world I want her to grow up in," she said. "One that makes room." He nodded and for once had nothing to add. Just silence. The kind that wasn't empty anymore. That night, Alyssa sat in the quiet office of the new center, rocking Grace gently in her arms. A journal lay open beside her. A single sentence written in clean, deliberate script. "I have nowhere to go," she said. She looked down at Grace, then out the window where streetlights glowed like soft lanterns. "And then," she whispered, "I made someplace."